Welcome to The Explainer. For thousands of years, they were sacred tools for shamans. Then, they got banned. Now, these same ancient compounds are at the very heart of a modern medical revolution. Today, we're diving into the science of the great psychedelic renaissance.
Okay, so let's just start with the why now question. And honestly, this chart says it all. After a big surge in the mid-20th century, you can see research just fell off a cliff in the 70s. That was a direct result of the war on drugs. But just look at what's happened in the last decade. That spike? That's not just a comeback, it's a full-blown scientific explosion.
But here's the thing. Calling it a renaissance almost doesn't do it justice. It's really a rediscovery. Psychedelics are anything but new. They've been used for centuries, in shamanic rituals, to alter consciousness, to heal, and to connect with something bigger. What's new is the science we're finally applying to understand how they work.
So you can see this whole wild journey laid out right here. For literally millennia, these were sacred teacher plants. Then, boom, the 1960s happen, and they explode into Western culture. That, of course, led to a huge backlash, a period of prohibition that just slammed the brakes on almost all research. And now, we're in this new era of careful, clinical science, trying to unlock all that potential.
All right, so who are the main characters in the story? What are these compounds everyone's talking about? Let's meet the big five, the key players at the center of this whole revival. And each one has its own unique story.
First up, our journey takes us all the way to the rainforests of equatorial Africa. This is where we find Iboga. It's this incredibly potent alkaloid that comes from the roots of a single sacred shrub.
Yep, its only source is the root of the Tabernanthe Iboga shrub. Traditionally, it was used in spiritual rites and even as a stimulant to fight off fatigue. But the thing that has modern science absolutely buzzing is its incredible, almost unbelievable potential as a powerful anti-addiction treatment.
Okay, from the rainforest, let's head to the desert. This is where we find mescaline, and it's hidden inside the small, unassuming peyote cactus.
For centuries, shamans have used the dried tops of the cactus. They call them mescal buttons in really important religious ceremonies. And when it's consumed, it's famous for kicking off these incredibly vivid, often geometric visual hallucinations.
All right, next up is a molecule with a pretty cool nickname, the spirit molecule. We're talking about DMT. It's an extremely powerful but very short-acting psychedelic that you find in the leaves of an Amazonian shrub.
It's the main psychoactive ingredient in that legendary ceremonial brew Ayahuasca. And how they make it is just fascinating. Shamans actually combine these DMT-containing leaves with other plants that act like a key, unlocking the DMT so it can work when you drink it. It was, and still is, used to communicate with ancestors and the spirit world.
Okay, now for a compound I'm pretty sure you've heard of, psilocybin. It's the active molecule in over 200 species of so-called magic mushrooms that grow all over the globe. And its history is ancient. I mean, really ancient. We're talking about rock paintings in Spain and Algeria that suggest it was used in sacred ceremonies thousands and thousands of years ago. In Mesoamerica, shamans used these mushrooms to induce trances for divination and even for diagnosing illnesses.
And that brings us to our final molecule, LSD. This one is the odd one out because it has zero ancient ceremonial history. Its origin story is completely different and pretty famous.
Yeah, unlike everything else we've talked about, LSD wasn't found in a rainforest. It was created in a Swiss pharmaceutical lab back in 1938 by a chemist named Albert Hofmann. He actually made it from a fungus that grows on rye. He wasn't even looking for a psychedelic. It was a total accident 5 years later that he discovered what he'd really created.
So you've got this really diverse group of molecules, from plants, from fungi, even from a lab. How on earth do they all produce such profound and, frankly, similar effects on our consciousness? Well, it all comes down to a tiny little target in our brains.
The whole secret, really, boils down to this one specific target, the serotonin 2A or 5-HT2A receptor. You can think of it like the main docking station or the ignition switch for the whole experience. Molecules like LSD, DMT, mescaline, and psilocin, which is what your body turns psilocybin into, they're all like different keys, but they all fit into the same lock. And turning that lock is what gets everything started. Once that key is in the lock, it kicks off this amazing chain reaction. It boosts the activity of glutamate, which gets your brain cells firing, and that ultimately promotes what scientists call neuroplasticity.
And that's just a fancy way of saying it's the brain's incredible ability to form new connections and rewire itself. It's like shaking up a snow globe. It allows all those old, stuck patterns to resettle in new, healthier ways.
And that right there, that ability to shake up the snow globe and help the brain break out of rigid, stuck patterns is exactly why researchers are so incredibly excited about their potential for treating some of our most difficult mental health conditions.
And the potential uses here are just stunning. We're not talking about minor issues. Just look at this list. There are clinical trials happening right now for treatment-resistant depression, for deep-rooted addictions, for PTSD, even for the profound anxiety people face at the end of their lives. In all these areas, the early results are really turning heads.
I mean, just take addiction. This quote about Iboga gets right to the heart of how revolutionary this is. A single dose can block withdrawal and reduce cravings for a significant amount of time. That's not just a new medication. That's a completely different way of thinking about treatment.
The results for depression are just as jaw-dropping. In a major clinical trial, patients with severe depression got a single 25 milligram dose of psilocybin. The result? Their depression scores dropped by an average of 12 points. Now, in clinical terms, that is a massive improvement, all from just one session.
Okay, but as amazing as all of this sounds, we have to pump the brakes a little. This is not a magic bullet. The road from the lab to your local clinic is filled with some pretty big challenges and very real risks.
You really have to look at both sides of the coin here. On the one hand, the promise is incredible. Fast-acting, long-lasting effects from maybe 1 or 2 doses. But on the other hand, you have serious challenges. There are physical risks, like potential heart issues with Iboga. There are psychological risks, like a bad trip. And this part is absolutely crucial. This isn't about just taking a pill. For this to work safely, it has to happen in the context of psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, with trained guides helping before, during, and after.
So this leaves us with a big question. It's not really if these compounds work. The science on that is becoming clearer every day. The real question is whether our society is ready to integrate this ancient wisdom, now that it's being backed up by modern science, and fundamentally reshape how we treat the human mind. The Renaissance is here, no doubt about it. But the revolution? Well, that's just getting started.